Morning. Welcome to the King's Report News Hour for Tuesday, the 15th of Chungi, the 10th month, and the 10th, I'm sorry, no, not the 10th month, the 11th month, and 10th day by the hand of the calendar. The elder sitting in for the second king of Chungi. Let's go to the 5 locations where the king has established the Chungi flag. Right now in Chongqing, Tennessee, 54 degrees, under partly cloudy skies, 66 for a high today, mild with occasional rain and drizzle. Looks like it's going to be a rainy day. 37 for low tonight, periods of rain and a thunderstorm tonight. And then in northeast Pennsylvania at the Chundergung Palace, it is currently 41 degrees with a drizzle. There as well, low clouds and fog, spotty drizzle early this morning, and 45 degrees for a high, 42 for a low tonight with rain. And then at the Liberty Rock RV Park and Campground in Limestone County, Texas, currently 46 under clear skies, 55 for a high tonight, 31 below freezing in Texas, breezy this evening, otherwise clear and colder, 31. Actually, North Texas, the Panhandle area, I think it's already had snow. That was even before Thanksgiving. But yeah, Central Texas, this might be the first time that it has dipped below freezing. And at the Suncheon Palace in Korea, 40 degrees, clear skies, partly cloudy and breezy today, 31 for a low tonight, and 53 for a high tomorrow. And at the Gunma Palaces in Japan, 44 and clear right now, 34 for a low tonight, 52 for a high tomorrow. All right, let's go to Father's Word. Let's see here. Pardon? My camera cut out? Okay, thank you for letting me know. I'm sure everybody wants to see me. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. I'm in the book on the way of the citizen of the completed Testament age, and I'm in the chapter 4 of that book and section 3 there. Section 3.2. Section 3 is the 7 declarations that Father made in Jardim, Brazil. And 3.2 is the second declaration. Let's see what that, this is August 7th, 1998. Father established an education center in, the, I guess, the Amazon region there in Jardim, Brazil. And a lot of pioneering was done there. A lot of, land was cleared and structures were built. Unfortunately, now it has sort of fallen on hard times, but I hope that we can bring that back at some point. Father here says in this declaration, God is absolute, unique, eternal, and unchanging. We are God's children, so we resemble his attributes as absolute children, unique children, eternal children, and unchanging children. We must become that. We must become that. And we must become absolute husband-wife, unique husband-wife, eternal husband-wife, and unchanging husband-wife. And we must become absolute parents, unique parents, eternal parents, unchanging parents, and complete absolute families, unique families, eternal families, and unchanging families. Father's second declaration at Jardim on August 7th, 1998. Praise God. Yes. Let's see. Today, we are expecting some good news, but before that, let me show you this. Some of you have received the link. If you check your emails, I think I believe it was Richard Panzer that sent this out. to all of us who are on his mailing list. If you didn't get it, you should probably contact someone to get yourself on his mailing list. It's a very important source of information about what's going on. But as you can see, our fearless leader, Second King, was interviewed in the studio of Real America's Voice, a conservative news outlet, their studio in Florida, and they asked him to comment and to explain the situation in Korea surrounding the impeachment, or the so far failed impeachment of President Yoon there. Although it appears that I don't know, they are, well, right now the South Korean government party is trying to figure out what to do, because the opposition party, as you may guess, is not making life any easier for them. The South Koreans, the government party said, the ruling party said, okay, the president has said that he will not, so he will be, what shall I say? He's going to move into the background. In other words, he's not going to actively take part in governing the country. Okay, so then, well, according to the Constitution, when the president is, when the office of president is vacant, then the prime minister takes over that office, takes over the responsibilities of president. And so the governing party, well, actually the prime minister said, okay, then I will take charge. The opposition party said, well, wait a second, where does it say in the Constitution that you can take charge when the president is still in office? See, the opposition party, their purpose is to pressure the governing party into agreeing to impeach the president. Because last weekend they tried, but the government party, so the ruling party, it's not really ruling, is it? Anyway, President Yoon's party, although he's actually not a member, because when you become president, you have to leave your party. It's different from America in that respect. They refused to participate in the impeachment vote, or at least almost all of them refused to participate in the impeachment vote. And so the quorum failed. They failed to get a quorum. They couldn't impeach him because of that. So now the opposition party, of course, is trying to pressure members of the governing, let's call it the governing party, the ruling party, to participate in the impeachment vote so that they can at least get a quorum. And once they get a quorum, then they have to pass the motion to impeach. So that's why the opposition party is making it difficult for the government party to sort of get around this impeachment situation. I saw a report that they're going to try again this weekend, but also the governing party is saying that, well, you know, or reports say, the governing party is saying, well, maybe in February or March, we will get the president to resign. Okay, then that will mean that there will be an election in May. And then, you know, but of course, if there is an election, the extreme leftist Lee Jae-myung is likely to win. And right now, the Western sort of media is saying, oh, you know, democracy prevailed in South Korea. But actually, no. No. No, because Lee Jae-myung is anything but a Democrat. He's about as democratic as, let's say, Nancy Pelosi or Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama. All right, simply using democracy to fulfill his political objective, which is to take South Korea into socialism and to take South Korea into a kind of take South Korea into unity with North Korea, centering on North Korean socialism, North Korean version of communism and Marxism. So, and the attempt at martial law, the failed attempt at martial law, came out of a frustration of the president that he could see this happening, but he didn't feel that he could prevent it by any other way. That he wanted some way to stop this sort of slippery slope that South Korea is going down towards socialism and Marxism. And this was from his perspective, this was the only way that he could do that. But of course, it failed because, and there are many reasons it failed. But basically, though, I think a lot of people who would normally be expected to fulfill orders and instructions did not. And the president perhaps was thinking that the military, since he is commander in chief of the military, he was thinking that the military would obey him, but many members of the military did not. And so it has failed. And so now the slippery slope has become even steeper in the sense that South Korea now is moving even more quickly down this road than it would have if he had done nothing. And I think well, hindsight is 2020, but he acted rashly, and another option, in my opinion, for him would have been to use the office of president as a kind of a bully pulpit and to educate the South Korean people on what is going on. Now he's lost that. He's lost almost any ability to speak publicly. And even if he did speak publicly, his words would have a little impact, I'm afraid, on the South Korean people now. So I'm somewhat pessimistic about where South Korea is going over the next, say, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. If Lee Jae-myung wins the presidency, let's say in May, according to the schedule that the current governing party is thinking of, then he will have a 5-year term going until, what would it be, 2030, right? 2025 to 2030. Korean presidents serve a single 5-year term. They cannot stand for re-election. So you will go, and during that 5 years, well, it's anybody's guess at just exactly how far he can take South Korea. Many of us remember Father repeatedly warning that there will come a day when North Korea will propose that there be a election for president covering both North and South Korea. Let's elect a president. Let's elect a president together. And Father said, in that case, North Korea will put up one candidate. South Korea will put up multiple candidates. And as a result, even though South Korea has a larger population and a larger voting population, because the vote will be divided, the North Korean candidate will win, and there will be a communist leader of the entire peninsula. And so Father's warning, and then his solution to that was to educate the South Korean people on communism. One of the three early, when I joined in 1974, we had 3 textbooks, basically. I was in 1974, 1970s, and I guess through most of the 1980s. One was, of course, the Divine Principle. The second one was Unification Thought, and which was basically a philosophical application of a divine principle. And the third was a book called Critique of Communism and Counterproposal, and it's Counterproposal. And this third book was an analysis of Marxism from a perspective of divine principle. And of course, it went into the material dialectic, the historical dialectic. It went into Marxist theories about what happens in the egg and all this kind of stuff. And then it proposed a counterproposal, so that whereas Marx said that human civilization develops through struggle, in other words, through the thesis and the antithesis, struggling against each other and then producing a new synthesis. The Father's teaching, the divine principle, says that no, actually, it's the unity of subject and object, centering on God's will, that produces development in human civilization, and so forth and so on. These kinds of counterproposal to the each point of Marxism. And so the idea was that Father's idea was that the South Korean population needed to be educated on these principles, on the counterproposal to Marxism. And that was done up through the, I guess, well, until Kim Dae-jung became president, basically. Yeah. When Kim Dae-jung became president, of course, he was a leftist, and even though he received the Nobel Peace Prize, which Nobel Peace Prize committee, by the way, is a leftist committee, so it's not surprising. But when he became president, the leadership of Family Federation took a leftward turn, and from that point on, the teaching of victory over communism, or VOC as we call it, was reduced or even, I would say, eliminated from church activities. And again, I've talked previously about how the South Korean leadership of under Father often tried to curry favor with the secular governing body of the time. And this, I would say, was another example of that. Because the government was going left, then church leadership also went left. Or shall I say, leftist people came into the church leadership positions. I think maybe that's a more accurate way of putting it. The church is supposed to perform the role of a prophet. And a prophet does not follow the secular authority. A prophet teaches to and even chastises the secular authority. And the prophet is supposed to be connected to God and representing God and speaking to the king or other ruler at the time with God's word. And so, as the Family Federation leadership went to the left, the church should have maintained course, and spoken out against this kind of trend and continued the VOC education. It did not, and we are seeing the product of that today, where South Korea is on this slippery slope, and President Yoon's desperate effort to stop the slide has failed, and the slide has become even more intense, and is going down even more quickly, I would say. Now, today there are Christians, and as the King says in his interview with Real America's Voice, there are Christians, quite a few Christians, who are supporting the president. And each weekend they gather, each Saturday they gather at the main intersection in Seoul, the Gwanghwamun intersection, and they demonstrate in support of the president. These are patriots and Christians. But right now, the sort of the political wind is blowing very, very heavily against them, and they did their best in the parliamentary elections last spring, and they managed to prevent the leftists from gaining a two-thirds majority in the National Assembly, which was a good thing. They needed 200 seats for a two-thirds majority. And they got 192. So they were able to block that possibility. And so now the opposition party cannot have a quorum in the National Assembly on their own for an impeachment vote. An impeachment vote requires a quorum of two-thirds. Other votes require 50%, but for impeachment you have to have two-thirds for there to even be a vote. But right now the opposition party is chipping away at the members of the governing party, and some have, I think, some already last weekend already 3 of the governing party already participated in the quorum vote, and they just need another, what now, I guess 5 more or something like that, to establish a quorum if they try again this weekend, which they may very well do that. And the opposition party is saying, well, let's impeach the prime minister now, because he tried to take over the position of the president. And whenever someone is impeached, then their powers in that office are suspended, you see. So if they impeach the prime minister, then who's running the country? Right? Who's running the country? Well, frankly, right now you have the dictatorship of the opposition party. You have the dictatorship of the opposition party. Yeah. Listen, I'm sure Nancy Pelosi is watching this and saying, "Oh man, how come we couldn't do that?" Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, all these people are watching this and say, "Wow, these guys are really great. How come we couldn't do that?" Yeah. Fortunately, that has been stopped in this country, in America, stopped by the grace of God, by the grace of God. Anyway, let's take a look at 1 or 2 of the stories that are going around about this. Let's see here. Well, yeah, we'll get to Syria in just a minute. But first, I want to do this. By the way, Tech Team, do we have an interview today? I never asked you that. Okay, can you make sure, please? All right, let's see here. We're looking now at some headlines here on Google News. South Korean retail investors dump stocks amid political crisis. And here, this is what? Is that Axios? We don't even know who's running the country. South Korea's ruling party stalls for time amid leadership crisis. In the Financial Times in the UK, no one knows who's in charge. South Korea's president clings to office. The Straits Times in Singapore says South Korea's political crisis poses graver threat to its foreign policy ambitions than the economy, and so forth. Here, looking for other recent ones. Those are the only recent ones. Okay, travel ban for South Korean president, even after martial law attempt. So now the president cannot leave the country, and also New York Times, South Korea unsure who is running the government. And then Okay. Foreign Policy Magazine, South Korea is in constitutional chaos. Basically, yes. And the chaos is intended by it's the opposition's intention to create chaos so that they can bring down the government and force a presidential election as quickly as possible so that they can get into power and so that they can start taking the country down that slippery slope to socialism. And unfortunately, South Korea is really living through this saying that you can vote your way into socialism, but you have to shoot your way out. What does this mean for America? So far, U.S. troops are not affected, but certainly as the opposition party takes over and gets closer and closer to North Korea, then the opposition party will start to say, well, listen, the American soldiers are in South Korea to defend us against North Korea, right? That's their purpose for being here, right? So now that we're friends with North Korea, right? There's no longer a reason for South Korea for U.S. troops to be in South Korea, right? So please leave. Some of us remember a similar situation happened in the Philippines way back, where the Philippine government at one time actually requested that U.S. forces leave the Philippines, and they did. Subic Air Base and Subic Base and other bases in the Philippines were all closed down, and U.S. forces left. And something similar could very well happen, almost certainly will happen, I would say, if the opposition takes over and pursues their pro-North Korean policy. All right, now let's talk about Syria. Okay. Syria, yeah. Now, South Korea, no one knows who's governing South Korea. No one knows who's governing Syria. kind of a parallel there. But right now, what's taking place is that Israel and I think also the United States are doing the best they can to destroy any kind of war-making material or equipment that remains from the now non-existent government army of Syria. More than 300 Israeli strikes on Syria since the fall of Assad, reports say. This is the BBC. Israeli warplanes have reportedly carried out hundreds of airstrikes across Syria, including on the capital Damascus. The UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, or SOHR, said it has documented more than 310 strikes by the IDF. That's the IDF is the Israeli Defense Force, since the fall of Assad regime on Sunday. The strikes have targeted military facilities of the Syrian army, including weapon warehouses, ammunition depots, airports, naval bases, and research centers. And the research center, especially that was bombed, was said to be where Iran was developing missiles. Israel says its actions are to prevent weapons falling into the hands of extremists as Syria transitions into a post-Assad era. Because the people who are taking over are not, necessarily good guys, right? So the person who is in the news most recently is this guy Al Jilani, who says that he is no longer an Al Qaeda terrorist. He says that this was a youthful indiscretion, and that as he grew older, he learned better. But Biden said in his remarks that, well, we have to see their actions, not just their words, and we will see, I guess, what happens there. But it's really unclear what is going to happen or who is going to take over Syria, and it may be divided into 4 sections. That's one possibility that has been floated. It may become kind of a federated state. Apparently, Syria did have a democratic period, but only for 4 years, from 1954 to 1958. I think that might be too short of a period for them to reach back in a similar way that Japan reached back to its democratic past after World War II. I think democracy in Japan had little more of a foundation prior to the military takeover in the 1920s, late 20s, I guess, and 30s in Japan. More of a democratic hold so that they could reach back to that. But we'll see. We'll see how it has to be the Syrian people. Please, 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 please. Let's not get involved in nation building again. Okay. Let's not try to recreate the globalist view of a democracy in another largely Muslim country. Largely because not everyone's a Muslim there. There are Christians. There are Kurds. There are Druze who are atheists. But let's not do Afghanistan again. Let's not do Iraq again, please. Oh man, with President Trump at the head, I guess we can be fairly confident that he will not do that. Certainly, if Harris were dealing with this, she would be leading an effort for nation building, I'm sure. Everybody is going to find the kingdom of heaven, but they have to walk their own path. They have to walk their own path. And the path that Western civilization or European or the derivatives of European civilization are walking is not necessarily, in fact, is not the same path that Muslims will walk, or even Chinese will walk, or even Japanese. If you look at the Japanese idea of democracy, it's very different. Basically, the same political party has ruled Japan since the Second World War. Basically, not there were interim periods where they did not, but basically so. So you can tell just from that the Japanese idea of democracy is very different from the American or European idea. Anyway, try to prevent weapons from falling into the hands of extremists, and I think that's a good idea. The SOHR reported that the attacks spanned Aleppo, Damascus, and Hama, with more than 60 taking place overnight between Monday and Tuesday alone. Reports say that many of the facilities have not merely been damaged, but completely destroyed. Well, that's the objective, I'm sure. And the founder of SOHR described the impact of the strikes as destroying all the capabilities of the Syrian army and said that Syrian lands are being violated. The IDF denied that its troops had strayed into Syrian territory, telling the BBC that reports of tanks near Damascus are false. But Netanyahu did say that the IDF was going to take over the buffer zone, or the buffer zone in the Golan Heights. And he justified this by saying that, well, the buffer zone is based on an agreement between Israel and the Assad government that was signed in 1974. And now, since that government no longer exists, Israel has to assume that agreement also is now broken, no longer exists. And so Israel, Netanyahu says, for its own defense now, is taking control of the Syrian side of the Golan Heights, of that buffer zone. But reports have said that Israeli troops have gone even farther into Syria, and here they're saying that reports of tanks near Damascus are false. IDF troops are stationed within the buffer zone, as stated in the past, a spokesperson said. On Monday, the Israeli military released photos of its troops who crossed from the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights into the demilitarized buffer zone in Syria, where UN peacekeepers are based. The IDF seizure of Syrian positions in the buffer zone was a temporary defensive position until a suitable arrangement is found. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said, well, you know what happens to temporary positions, right? Well, we'll see just how temporary that's going to be. If we can establish neighborly relations and peaceful relations with the new forces emerging in Syria, that's our desire. But if we do not, we will do whatever it takes to defend the state of Israel and the border of Israel, he said on Monday. So this is where, I think also U.S. forces have been participating as well in some of these bombings. I think especially the one over here in the east, maybe was done by a U.S. aircraft. Asked about the idea of strikes on Monday night, Israeli Foreign Minister said Israel was concerned only with defending its citizens. That's why we attack strategic weapons systems, like, for example, remaining chemical weapons or long-range missiles and rockets, in order that they will not fall into the hands of extremists, he said. On Monday, the UN's chemical watchdog warned authorities in Syria to ensure that suspected stockpiles of chemical weapons are safe. It is not known where or how many chemical weapons Syria has, but it is believed former President Bashar al-Assad kept stockpiles. And Israel's attacks come after Syrian rebel fighters captured the capital. We know about that. Okay, we know about that already. So let's see what other stories. Assad's police threatened to bury me in my reporting. Now I'm back and free. What comes next? Okay. Maps how did anti-Assad rebels take control. Syria rescuers in search for secret cells in Jordan prison. And Syrian asylum seekers in limbo as countries stop applications. Yeah, so Austin Tice, an American reporter, still, I think we have not heard anything about him, which is concerning. Let's see if there's anything. Biden special envoy for hostages in Beirut in search of Austin Tice. Right. So it looks, yeah, top priority. Yeah, it looks like no new news on his whereabouts. U.S. races defined. Yeah. Right. So I think it was hoped that he might be in that prison that they broke into yesterday, but it looks like he was not there. It's disappointing. Israel deploys paratroopers to Syria in defense activities after fall of Assad. Mhm. All right. So there are reports that maybe they have gone beyond the Golan Heights, but Israel insists no, 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 no. And it doesn't look like there are any confirmation of Israeli troops beyond the Golan Heights so far. And here, this is who Saudi Arabia says Israel is determined to sabotage Syria's chance for stability. Well, if it's going to be stable with a strongly anti-Israeli government, then, can you blame them? Did we get a response on that interview question? Okay, all right. All right, then we'll continue. Thank you. All right. Okay. All right, let's see what else is going on. Let's go to Newsmax and see what they're saying this morning. I encourage everyone to go to Real America's Voice. I think what is the address there? Killed it. Yeah. I think is what was it? I think it was yeah, it's yeah, it's America's Voice.news. You can go to americasvoice.news and find that interview, or look in your email. I think Richard sent it to a lot of us late last night. All right, let's see what's Newsmax talking about. Okay, apparently this guy who killed the insurance company CEO being treated as a hero by some. Okay. And Trump opened to RFK Jr. probing autism and vaccines. Yeah. Maybe some new information can come from that. Viktor Orban, who's from the leader of Hungary, meets Trump and Elon Musk. Okay. And Nobel laureate's letter. Nobel laureates. Okay. Nobel laureates. It's unfortunate to know that, Alfred Nobel, I guess he invented dynamite, and so he started this he started this thing with Nobel Prizes in order to kind of assuage his conscience for having developed something that was used in wars. But and it's done by Norway and Sweden, for the most part, and it's become so leftist that it has really lost pretty much all credibility except for leftist people. My father established a prize, but that prize also now has been taken over by Hak Jahan. We'll have to do something about that at some point in the future when the time is right. And, okay, and here, the issue of ending birthright citizenship. America is one of a few countries in the world, I guess, that gives citizenship to anyone who is born in America, and this is causing problems right now because women come here who are pregnant for the specific purpose of having their babies in America so that the baby will have American citizenship, and that will make it easier for them to stay in America, get resident status or even citizen status in America. And this is a kind of controversial because this is kind of one of the things that helps to define America, or has until now. A senior advisor to President-elect Donald Trump said Monday on Newsmax that ending birthright citizenship presents a very interesting legal question. Trump has said that birthright citizenship guaranteed to the American-born child of an illegal immigrant by the Constitution's 14th Amendment absolutely must end. But as that paragraph said, it's guaranteed by the 14th Amendment. So it might take a constitutional amendment to change that. And I don't think you're going to get a consensus in America anytime soon on making that kind of a change. Donald Trump has said that once you step one foot into this country, if you have a baby here, that person by the Constitution is an American citizen. Lewandowski told National Report there are some real concerns about that. We know that people come to this country just to have their children here. We also know that we've got tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of convicted criminals in this country that have to be deported. We know that we've got murderers and rapists and people who have been let in over the last few years, who Donald Trump's priority is going to be to first seal the border, and that only legal immigrants get to come in, and then to deport the people who shouldn't be here legally. Lewandowski said it's a legal matter. So listen, the open question of can this be done through executive action or does a federal law need to be passed is one that attorneys will ultimately decide. But that being said, we have to have a system in place where legal immigrants are given the priority, and those who are in the country illegally will be shipped out. He said, if they want to stay with their families, the president said that's okay, that's a decision you will make. But if you're in this country illegally and you've been a criminal or a convicted felon, we're going to get you out of this country very quickly. Lewandowski also discussed the president-elect's plan to pardon those serving prison sentences for taking part in the January 6, 2021 breach of the U.S. Capitol building. This is Donald Trump fulfilling the campaign promises that he made to the American people. He said, this is what we have seen from people who were the 9 non-violent offenders on January 6th is that there's been a two-tier justice system in this country for far too long. We didn't see the rioters that took place in the BLM movement have to spend 3 or 4 years in jail. Those who threw Molotov cocktails at police departments and burned substations around the country, had these massive riots all over, were treated very differently. And we know, and your viewers remember this. Vice President Harris and her team were actually paying to get those people out of jail because, by and large, they were in cities that condone or at least accept violence against police officers. As it relates to January 6th, the president has said that if these are nonviolent individuals and they're still in jail, their cases will be reviewed immediately and potentially a pardon for them on day one for people who were trying to exercise some of their free speech, Lewandowski added. I mean, so we'll see. I think President Trump has created a huge workload for himself on day one, on January 20th. And we'll see how much of that he is actually able to get through on the first day. But the birthright question, I think that's going to maybe take a little more time. And I think, as I've mentioned, it looks like right now that the issue of getting illegal immigrants out of the country is going to go in stages, and first will be the criminals. Some of these people are already in prison, so the government obviously knows where they are. So they can deport those if they want to. Maybe they'll keep them and have them serve out their sentences. I don't know. But anyway, when they serve out their sentences, then they'll deport it then, or those who are, will be deported immediately. And also, there are criminals who are still out on the street, and I guess they'll try to find them, and when they catch them, they'll be deporting those people. And the second group of people are that I guess they're going to try and deport. Second priority will be those who came to the border and were given a court date to appear, and the court has already come to a decision saying that, okay, we looked at your case, we looked at your asylum application, and the answer is no, you have to leave. And that court decision was given, and basically, as far as the courts are concerned, this person can be deported at any time, but they sort of absconded. They don't know where they are, or at least they're not being deported. So that's the second priority. Then the third priority would be people who came in illegally and just are sort of, who are in America, who did not report, who did not apply for asylum or anything like that, and are here without papers, without identification. And as I've expressed, as the pendulum swings back, I'm concerned that there may be some excesses. When Eisenhower deported 1.5 million people during his administration, some people who were deported actually turned out to be American citizens. In some cases, apparently, American citizens found themselves in Mexico somehow. I hope they made it back. But, so those kinds of excesses are possible in this kind of situation. And so I hope that Tom Homan and his staff are very, very careful to minimize. I don't know if you can completely eliminate, but minimize such excesses. Now, also, President Trump has spoken about the Dreamers, the DACA, DACA, Delayed Action on Childhood Arrivals. And he has, said, okay, someone came here as a child, who was brought here as a child by their parents. They don't speak the language of their home country, mostly Spanish, I guess. And they have jobs. They haven't committed serious felonies, and they're contributing to American economy, American society. Maybe there's something we can work out. He says, I'll talk to the Democrats. We'll try to work out something with the Democrats. But he also said, well, but the Democrats are making it very, very hard to come to any kind of an agreement on this. So we'll have to see how that works out. But I certainly hope that as I've said, I have to go now, I guess, huh? Yeah, I have to go to school. I think we should accept, I haven't heard anyone else talking about this, but we should accept that by we, I mean the 300 plus million American people should accept that we also bear responsibility. We failed to protect our border. And you can say, oh, it's somebody's fault, it's somebody's fault, it's somebody's fault. But basically, though, when push comes to shove, it's all of our responsibility because we are the owners of this country, right? As citizens of this country, we failed to put the right people in office. Perhaps you can put it that way, but we need to take some responsibility for the fact that our border was not protected. And so I think some leeway from that perspective, some leeway should be shown to people like the childhood arrivals, for example. I think we don't need to be putting people on airplane who are, productive members of society, even if they legally are not here. But as I said, there has to be conditions. No path to citizenship. Only people who go through the legal process can have a path to citizenship. Cannot invite relatives. Cannot invite relatives. That's exclusive to people who go through the legal process. That's my opinion. All right, gotta go. I'll see you all tomorrow. And tomorrow we'll have a half-hour session in English and then a Korean session following that. God bless, Godspeed. May His kingdom come quickly.